We have a question from him.
Hi, I'm unsure on, I guess, the stipulations in spending for Measure Y funds, and unfortunately I couldn't go to the meeting Tuesday night. But I was wondering if there was any plans to spend the Measure Y funds on any climate change solutions here in San Luis Obispo.
Who wants to take a crack at that?
Briefly, Measure Y is the tax increase that was passed by the voters in San Luis Obispo. And certainly a lot of the efforts that we are doing in San Luis Obispo with Measure Y monies are just business as usual. We're paving the streets, we're putting more cops on the streets. One of the things I did get done, though, was, since I've never been able to get rid of the DARE program year after year, they came to us and they were going to buy a big old honking SUVs, 8-cylinder for their new DARE van, and I said, please, couldn't we at least get something green? So yeah, we have now a new hybrid for the DARE program. A hybrid van, sedan, and a lot of other hybrids. We've managed to put in all LED street lights around town. We have now bought Priuses with new money for vehicles. I have also worked with the Air Pollution Control District and the city, and we are doing our greenhouse gas inventory so we can then come up with a greenhouse gas reduction plan. That's all part of the climate agreement that the mayor signed, but it was just one of those things that gets signed. Policies are written, books are filled with policies, they're put up on a shelf, and unless somebody stands up and demands we take action on it, it doesn't happen. So specifically, Measure Y monies are not going specifically for green efforts, but Measure Y monies are going to carry on the business of the city, and hopefully some of that business will be a little bit greener.
All right, we have one more question in the back, really quick.
Hi, thanks. I'm a physician. I haven't heard enough today about what the Dean of Public Health at UC Berkeley says is going to be the #1 public health problem, and that is climate change. I'll leave that there, and my question is, locally, how can we do a better job of incentivizing proper food choices? 30% of the arable land mass in the world goes to producing meat, and meat is a very wasteful source of calorie acquisition. I think local governments could do something to incentivize proper diet choices and diminish those choices that are so wasteful, like beef production, for example. How about that, Debbie?
We have someone that hasn't responded yet.
I didn't hear that question was for me. And to try to answer your whole question, well, I'm going to take the last half of your question, and I think that more healthy food choices, I've always thought of our meat production, whatever grazing animals were, it was one of many food sources, but I used to tell folks that by utilizing the landscape in its natural state, and this is historically true, grazing animals use your natural landscape, and they just were producing food from a renewable resource, and that is the grasses on the ground. Before it was domestic livestock, it would people, mankind just hunted for the food, same kind of thing, grazing animals that utilizes the grasses on the ground. With farming coming in, it being implemented, whole civilizations were able to grow other types of food, other forms of food, and we became healthier as a result. But all of our food production has its own, it's a give and take, and intensified farming takes water and takes other resources from the ground as well. So I think it's all about, once again, a balance. Those hillsides that are unsuitable for farming or that we don't want to see the landscape changed, often have grazing animals, and those provide a food source. And then by balancing out, we're able to provide other food sources from using water and more intensified. Those intensified farming practices, though, also take fuels and other things, a lot more labor intensive.
This is a question for Mecham. For a number of years, the Sierra Club has had a Cool Cities campaign. And I know that in the past year, a number of people who live in Nassau have tried to convince you and the local government to become members of the Cool Cities campaign. And I know that you've refused to. So the first part of the question is, are you going to be able to do that in the next few months? And now there is another newer Sierra Club program called the Green Counties Campaign. And again, it's getting county governments and their elected officials to commit to ways of dealing with energy efficiency and climate change on the county level. So the second question is, are you going to be willing to publicly commit yourself to pressing for the Green Counties campaign before your election?
I didn't catch the first question. I didn't understand.
Cool cities and cool counties, both Sierra Club well-established programs. Are you going to be willing to commit in the next few months to turning the city of Paso into a city that supports the Cool Cities campaign?
I think that there's a lot of things that are being done to accomplish that. There's an awful lot of things that I think that are handed down, and I'll tell you right flat out, I did not sign the mayor's climate agreement, and I'll tell you why. First of all, it's another one of these mandates, it's another one of these regulations that's handed down by the federal government that oftentimes a local jurisdiction cannot meet. It just simply cannot meet that. But if you're doing something on the local level, if you put regulations, if you put stipulations, and if you put policies in place to address the green building, for example, we have the only LEEDs qualified inspector in San Luis County. We have green building that's been going on for some time. I don't think that there has to be a hammer over your head to say, if you don't sign on to this, then you must be bad. I think there's a lot of good things that are happening. So from the mayor's climate, one, I won't sign it because it is a mandate that I don't think that a community can fulfill. It's too costly for them to do that. And two, I don't sign something that I don't have the consensus of the people with whom I sit. And if they are not willing to agree to that, I don't think the mayor should walk off and be in front of everybody else all by themselves without any kind of support at all. I think that's what's made us successful, is trying to find a cohesive way to work together, and we've done real well with that.
Okay. My question is for the two challengers that are here tonight running for supervisor, Debbie Arnold and Adam Hill. Could you explain to the group why you are running for supervisor for the election of June 3rd?
I'm running for the position. I feel that I want to bring a voice that maybe isn't, or talking points to the board that aren't always heard, and that being the voice of the families, the working families in our district, the agriculturists in our district, the small businesses in our district. So I'm bringing to the table the experience I've gained in the last 8 years working for both county and state electeds, the ability and the experience of bringing agencies together and finding solutions. Assemblyman Blakesley is a very good teacher at that, being able to carve out solutions, to practical solutions to problems, and really go forward with making improvements. I'd like to bring that experience to our district.
I'm running because I believe that just as we are talking about tonight, we have some serious challenges ahead of us in this county that we need better leadership on. This is one of them. Certainly we can do a much better job at addressing energy efficiency. We can do a much better job at land use planning, water planning, transportation planning, because all of these things are connected. The county is confronted with at least a $20 million budget shortfall. There's going to have to be some hard choices made. We have serious infrastructure shortage problems. We have been doing things for a long time now, which basically we can no longer afford to do this way. We need a much more thoughtful approach to a host of issues. We need a much more comprehensive regional approach. The county and the cities cooperating on land use, on water use, on transportation, so that we can deal with these issues. I'm really confident. I think economic development is something that we're doing nothing at all in the county about. We don't even have an economic development specialist on the staff. This is something that I'm going to focus on. The economic forecast showed we are not creating jobs in our county. We're certainly not creating head of household jobs. We have an opportunity to do that. We're sitting in a place that is a wonderful asset to this community, and we are not making use of this asset. We should be incubating some wonderful clusters of clean, green technology startups. We should be creating these kinds of jobs in our community, because we will end up with no young people here, and that will be a major problem. So I want to bring some leadership and some innovation to the board. Thank you.
There's also another candidate for supervisor, Mayor Frank Mecham.
I am running for First District Supervisor as well, so I'll answer your question. I'm going to be bringing a pretty broad and a very diverse background to the board. From a private businessman all my life, I've been in business for myself, in the electrical contracting business, and then as a financial broker for Blakesley & Blakesley for 6 years. I think that some of these very issues that the county is being confronted with are going to fall right in line with some of the capabilities that I have. I've sat on numerous boards, from chairman of the board for a hospital, and it goes on and on. But I think going along with what Mr. Hill said regarding the leadership aspect of it, it took 10 years or better to try to finally pull together a lot of the communities within the county to say, how do we better serve this region with a water project? How do we do that? I mean, we used to talk about water like Friday night football, and it was if you wanted it, we didn't. If they did, we didn't. It took somebody to be able to sit down at the table and say, what do we got to do to work together to make things happen? I'm a consensus builder. I'm a pretty good negotiator, and I enjoy working with people. I'm going to bring a diverse background and a willingness to listen, which has not been done for quite some time. I think it's time to hear from everybody as opposed to continue to tell them what they need to do. And I think we need to start focusing a whole lot more on smart growth. And I mean that from a smart standpoint, not just a term that's been thrown out there. So I look forward to it.
We have a question.
Yes, I have a question for all of you. Tonight, you talked some about how it's important to have good political policies to bring about positive environmental change. And Christine spoke a little about how it's good to have personal habits to bring about environmental change. And we've all talked a lot about the difference between talking the talk and walking the walk. So I'm curious how you apply this measure in your own lives, and more specifically, how did you each get here tonight?
Well, I guess we can just go, let's try and be brief if we can, okay?
My wife and I came here in a Prius. And we thought it was important to do this, to buy this car, not just because we wanted better gas mileage, but because we did want to pollute less, and because we also thought, my wife had made this point, so I'm going to give her total credit for it, which is if we are going to see this technology continue to get better, then we need to be part of the solution at every stage of it, you know. And I know that there'll be hybrids that are going to be better in a year from now. There's going to be hybrids better in 2 years from now, and you know, I'm going to be glad that that we were part of that. And we do everything we can. You know, we have made really, I think, you know, to some extent you do have to make choices about how you live. You know, whether it be replacing your bulbs with CFLs and being much more conscious of how you waste things and what you spend and what you do. But, you know, we have really committed ourselves to, at least on our own personal family level, of trying to be part of the solution.
Thanks, Al. Jim?
Thank you. I've addressed that issue in two ways. And it comes from a philosophy that I believe it all starts with us as individuals. We can't always control what everybody else does, but we can certainly control what we do. I mentioned that I graduated from Cal Poly Natural Resources Management. I did the first feasibility study for curbside pickup of recyclables for EcoSlow in 1974. I've been recycling ever since, developing programs in Atascadero, as well as San Luis Obispo. I live on acreage that I purchased in 1977 in South Atascadero. Built a small house, 2 bedrooms, raised my family there, and live there still. It's super insulated. I have photovoltaic cells on the roof, and I have a batch hot water collector on the roof. Designed the house so it was passive solar, and that's how I live. I ride the bus often from South Atascadero into San Luis Obispo. I sometimes ride my bike. During Bike to Work Week, I ride down the grade, but I have to point out that you have to ride to the top before you can ride down. I haven't gone the other way yet, but I will. That's my goal for next year. So it's, you know, how we live our lives. We can control that, we can do that. And I encourage all of you to start with yourself and then grow that.
Well, none of us perfect, but we just try to do what we can. I believe conservation is where you start. I have a low energy, highly energy efficient refrigerator. I drive a super ultra low emission vehicle. I have a high efficiency, low energy, low water use washing machine. I have CFLs. I have an extremely low electric bill, so at this point it hasn't made any sense to put solar panels, but I am now getting ready to do hot water solar setup. Try to grow some of my own food. Try not to use too much water. Compost. I've been composting any food scraps for about 15 years now. I don't put anything out in the trash of that nature. Very little goes in the trash. Don't buy very much. Buy very little. And almost never buy something that's not made in the U.S. So you know I don't buy very much. Oh, and organic foods and locally grown foods whenever possible.
Well, I'm happy to say Frank and I carpool to get here tonight. And my family and myself, we are sensitive to that and carpool when we can. We are in the business of growing food and fiber, and we do have to haul things, so we do own tractors and larger vehicles for our work. I have to say that, but I'm very proud of the fact that my family works extremely hard, takes very few vacations where we drive outside of the county, and we do provide food and fiber for a lot of people. Otherwise, we've always been sensitive to, we've always had concerns about the environment and being wasteful. We seldom eat out. We're careful about buying things with packaging. I've never owned an air conditioner and never will. And I have zero escape at my home. I have not one thing that I have to water in my yard. Yay.
I walk a lot. I walk from home to work to City Hall back to work, and back home, unless I have a meeting out of town. But I walk pretty much everywhere. And it gives you a good opportunity to really get a chance to engage with the people in the community. When they're walking along, they'll stop you and ask you and tell you about the hole in their street. The other part of when we became so conscious several years back of the water issues, the young lady asked about the water issues. I ripped out the toilets, put in the low-flow toilets, put in the low-flow shower heads. I'm looking now at the zero clearance and the waterless hot water heaters, looking at the solar panels. We live in an area where you have as many days of sunshine as anywhere in the world, and yet we don't utilize it to its full capability. And then I tore out my lawns. I tore out all the lawn in the backyard. I started re-landscaping things.
And I'm wondering, is there any legislature currently that's either being written or is trying to be passed, either in the district or the city council, that has to do with green energy, dealing with sprawl and those types of things?
So, he's asking, I believe, if there are any local initiatives that are requiring green build or encouraging green build in local cities, if there are local initiatives that are requiring or encouraging smart growth. I believe that was the question. And let's have two responses. Go ahead, Jim.
Thank you, Larry. It was mentioned earlier that San Luis Obispo County has adopted smart growth principles, and those principles, and there are 12, are currently being incorporated into our zoning ordinance. So people that are building are encouraged through our zoning practices and also through incentives, streamlined processing and that sort of thing, to actually implement those programs. As far as the green build, all of the 7 incorporated cities, as well as the county, has signed a memorandum of understanding with Slow Green Build, which is a nonprofit organization that has put together a program to educate builders, educate government officials, and educate the general public about green build principles. We have streamlining permitting processes in place for green build projects, and we have a kiosk at the county building and planning department that gives information about green build principles and the values for doing that. We have architects on board that will review people's plans to make recommendations on green build practices, and all of that was done and initiated by a nonprofit group called Slow Green Build. That's a coalition of builders, students from Cal Poly, professors from Cal Poly, and a variety of other industry people. And it was that nonprofit that really initiated that effort. The County Board of Supervisors helped fund that effort, as did many of the cities. So that program's in place in all of the cities now, thanks again to a nonprofit organization of local people.
And I'll just add something very briefly. I see a lot of people are leaving, and we're going to need to wrap this up quickly, I think. But in the city of San Luis Obispo, we, this last year, adopted our updated conservation, open space, and energy element with a great deal of help from our local environmental organizations, EcoSlow and Sierra Club, to make sure that we got it right. That being said, all that is, again, is a set of policies and encouragements to do the right thing. It takes constant vigilance and involvement by the people in the community to make sure that we follow up on those policies.
All right, you guys. So we're going to take 3 more questions. We have one right here, and then we're going to take 2 student questions. If we could just have 1 response per question, because we're running a little short on time, if that's okay. Then if you guys want to talk afterwards, that's fine.
Thank you. I wanted to express my appreciation to both the organizations that put this on and all you panelists up there, and especially Sam Blakesley, who made it pretty obvious that this is not something we can put off for 50 or 30 years. We've got a decade. It's very urgent. And I wanted to know, I don't know if this one person can answer this, but I appreciate what you're doing as local officials. A lot of people seem to think that that's where the action is on global warming. if you have plans in the future, either as the organizations or as individuals, to spread the message instead of just having this one event here or maybe annual events, to communicate with other local officials in other cities around in the county, to start sharing expertise and ideas and initiatives to work further, whether or not it's a matter of signing the mayor's climate agreement or not, just practical things like Jim was talking about with the Green Bill. But I wanted to point out that and just a statement along what Christine was saying, is constant vigilance. I come from a city that signed the mayor's climate protection agreement, Atascadero. They were, and this is what I want to tell the folks out here, especially the young folks, if you think that somebody who signs a mayor climate protection agreement is a good thing or means much, all 5 members of the Atascadero City Council were invited to come and be up there on this panel and come down here and participate, and none of them showed up. So a piece of paper is just that. It's nothing but a piece of paper. And if you think of sitting back and relaxing when your government officials are giving you the nice words and that they're doing things, you're a fool. You have to be involved. That constant vigilance is key. This is too important.
Can I interrupt for a second? Is there a question?
Okay, sorry.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna have 2 student questions.
I actually just have a statement of optimism. This is my first quarter at Cal Poly. I'm here from Missouri. And I just want to say I'm honored to be in front of a community that's so concerned about issues that really matter, where that 50% margin is much higher back where I'm from. And what I want in local legislation is just more outlets of how we can express that environmental issues and issues regarding global warming can be actually really cool and trendy and exciting, and it doesn't have to be such a mandatory thing like you got to get on board or we're all going to die. It can actually be just something trendy for young people to catch on with, and I think that's something that can carry us further into the future, and just more outlets of how we can express that in the community is what I'm looking for. And again, I'm honored to be here.
I'd also like to thank you guys. I come from a town that wouldn't have had a panel like this, so thank you. My question to you tonight is, watching all the presentations today, we've noticed that this affects every area of education, and the reason this was such a great presentation today is because we were able to get every single college of the university involved in this. Kudos to Empower Poly for that. But yeah, give them a round of applause. I think one of the big problems with what we've researched so far as a community or as a nation really is we've been getting a lot of input from a lot of separate sources and not necessarily merging all this information and making some sort of coalition between all different areas of technology or engineering, sciences, prevention, cleanup, and having them work together as one. And I was wondering if you had any ideas in place to maybe get the civil engineers and the architects to work together, or get cleanup commissions together, working with the people that actually build what's happening and getting all these ideas brainstormed as one big group rather than maybe passing a note from one group to another.
Right.
Thank you, young man. I appreciate that, the comments and the question. One thing that we are doing, for Pastor Robles anyway, is working with Cal Poly. I don't know if Dr. Vesey is here tonight, but he's working with our folks in the wastewater treatment plant, trying to find a way that we can utilize treated salt-type water that would grow vegetation and use on our turf grass. And that's a Cal Poly project that they're going to be working with the city to see if that works out. That'll revolutionize the way we plant and how we water. So I think, as Mr. Lenthall said, you guys are the future. I think the answers to a lot of the questions are there. They're out here. It's just being able to focus and have the time and the money and the energy to focus on these issues, and we'll get to them. We won't solve everything, but if we just say it won't work and we're all doomed, it'll never work. So I think that there's ways to get to the answers.
Debbie, would you like to respond?
I want to share with you, we do have forward-thinking leaders, and your influence is important. You heard from Assemblyman Blakesley earlier today, but what he did not share with you is just here in this county, and I know how much that open space and which a lot of the open space you see is actually agricultural and privately owned property that are under conservation, agricultural conservation contracts we call the Williamson Act. The Assemblyman is introducing a bill that'll be working its way through the state legislature right now that essentially clarifies 700,000 acres, a third of our county right now, the open space you see is under these Williamson Act contracts, and today our farmers can't turn to producing biofuels without clarification of those contracts that they have engaged in for at least 10 years. So the Assemblyman, in knowing that we're going to be looking towards some of these solutions, very practically has introduced this bill so that the farmers in this county may participate in some of these solutions by switching crops over to crops that will produce biofuels.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to give our panelists each an opportunity to make just some closing comments on their own. So why don't we make that, we'll use our timer here, and let's go 90 seconds. So when it hits the yellow, you're done. Okay? And we'll start from the other end this time. Adam?
Thank you. I thank you all for having us here tonight. I'm basically going to be Christine's sunny little brother here because I am very optimistic that we will be able to address this incredibly serious problem. I mean, we are at the onset of a major transition in how we produce and consume energy in this country. And I think that with that will be enormous opportunities as we move towards a clean energy economy. It's going to just be, I think, pun intended, a very bright future for a lot of people. And I am very optimistic. I really do think, and this is something that sometimes gets left out of the environmental equation, that economic development is going to be a real driver in the solutions to this problem. And I feel very confident that we will make it. So thank you very much for coming tonight.
Jim?
Thank you. I want to address the young man's question, the last question that was asked, just quickly in reference to getting involved and what you can do. At Cal Poly, there's the Sustainable Ag Resource Consortium that's been working for years to look for alternative ways to produce food, more ecological and environmentally friendly ways to produce food. If you're in ag or natural resources, you can get involved there. There's Empower Poly that's bringing all of the different disciplines together. Engage there. Sea Change includes Strategic Energy Alliance for Change, environmental groups, business, energy producers, educators, faculty and students from Cal Poly, members of government, all working together to create change. Slow Green Build. Cal Poly representation there is huge. They're involved. You have one of the best architecture programs in the nation here. You all should be leading the way. There's opportunities to do that. There are three things that you should come away with tonight. There's three things that we need to do. The first thing we need to do is continue to implement the programs that will address climate change, address the impacts that we see coming in the future. We need to reduce our greenhouse emissions. That'll help us 10, 20 years away. There's a new thinking going on out there. It's called adaptation. Climate change is happening. We're going to suffer huge consequences in the very near future. We need to think about what those consequences are relative to water supply, flooding issues, climate extreme, and start investing in dealing with those impending issues. And the third thing, Dr. Evans said, get out and vote. If you don't, other people will be making the decisions for you. So please do vote.
Well, Kermit was right. It's not easy being green, but it is imperative that we all get on the bandwagon and tune up our green. New technologies are just waiting for all of you to knock on their door. We can make a change. We must make a change. It's not a question of will it work or not. It's a matter of do we try, and we have to try. Maybe we can make the difference. Maybe we can't, but we can't sit there with our thumbs up our noses crying over the fact that it's hard and we don't have a clear path set before us. But again, it is the individual who makes the difference. Again, the Maharishi said, consciousness has changed one consciousness at a time. We can't make somebody else do it, but if you're doing it and it looks good, other people are going to want to come along with you. Thank you for being here. I understand it was a fabulous day. I'm sorry I couldn't have joined you all for all of it, but I'm very pleased to have been here with you tonight. Thank you.
I too appreciate being invited here today and seeing the enthusiasm for making some positive change. And I just can't, I just want to reiterate that it's up to us. And I look to industry to make the changes, industry to provide us the new technologies. And I say that because industry is typically much more sensitive to your wants and needs. They live and die by what you choose to buy or participate in, and government's a little slower to react. Industry is very aware of our wishes as they come forward. So it's about us educating ourselves and educating our neighbors. We can make the change.
Well, I too appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I think that what you're seeing here is something that the gentleman out there, which he spoke, we need to do this more often and scatter all over the place to do these types of meetings so that we make this more of an awareness to a lot of folks. I can tell you every 2 years we go through our goal-setting workshops as a city council. And up until the last goal setting, I never heard the issue once. But this last goal setting, it was almost unanimous. The issue of energy and the issue of trying to find a better way to utilize our resources. That rose to the top of the list. How do you do that? And that consequently resulted in policies and programs, action programs that would implement those policies. But it does, as everybody has said here, it all starts with each and every one of us. You have to make the choice, do you want the SUV, do you want the hybrid? Do you want to have bamboo floors or do you want to have the old forest wood floors? Do you want to eat your vegetables from a roadside stand or do you want to go to a big shopping market, a supermarket? Those are all choices that each and every one of us have to make. And from there, it'll branch out. But I always think back to the time when, this is really showing how old we are, I am, before the time when we had a lot of seatbelts. And where did that evolve? How did that evolve to the point that now you don't even think a second time about doing that? It's because of education at the lowest level and working its way up. We need to educate the youngest ones. They're the ones that's going to implement, and they're the ones that's going to be saddled with the cost to do these things, as well as yourself. So the education starts from that level and works its way all the way up, and then it becomes second nature. You wouldn't get in the car now with a little kid without putting your seatbelt on, and they'd look at you and say, "What are you doing?" It's all in education, letting everybody know what we're confronted with and how we're going to deal with it, and you are the future. Thank you very much for having me tonight.
I also want to thank you. One of the disadvantages of going last is it's hard to come up with anything new that hasn't been said. One thing I'd like to point out is I brought 75 of these books with respect to the county. It's our community-wide results report for 2007. I think they all disappeared at the back. I would encourage you to review this information. Now, this information is only as good as the people that gave us input on what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. You can get it online. You can call me or any of the supervisors for that matter at 781-5450. We can try to get you another copy of it. The name of the document is the 2007 San Luis Obispo County Community-Wide Results Report. And I'll give mine up to somebody over here. I think I've got somebody in the back. I think he's got about 3 or 4, but I was only able to get about 75 from admin today in a box and carry them in here. Mayor Mecham talked about the seatbelt issue. I spent 33 years in law enforcement. I remember before we had seatbelts, before we had airbags, before we had car seats. These were ideas that somebody said, how do we reduce the carnage out there on the highway? It's education, it's enforcement, it's engineering. But some of these ideas came about by young people like yourself in school and said, hey, there's got to be a better way to do something. If we're going to affect change, I want to leave you with this. There's no progress without change, but there's no change without inconvenience. So if we're willing to make the inconvenience, we'll do that. Please look at this report. If there's something that I could do or any of my colleagues, if you have questions, comments, concerns on what's here, you want to get more involved and know about what the county's doing, please continue the dialogue. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here.
Well, we've heard quite a diversity of opinions here tonight, and I think a lot of good ideas. You guys asked some great questions, and I'd really like to thank our panelists for the time and effort that they took to come out here tonight and share their thoughts and opinions with you all. Now it's up to you. I mean, you guys, you've heard it several times tonight. It's your responsibility to get out there and vote and make sure that your voice is heard. You guys are the future out there, and you can tell people by your vote what you would like to see done. But it doesn't stop there. You know, these folks sit in meetings week after week making important decisions. And it turns out that there's just a very small group of people typically that show up at the meetings all the time. It's a lot of the same folks that come out and make their opinions heard. And the general public is not always that well represented. You come talk to your local officials when they're in their board meeting or city council meeting. It makes a difference. It does make a difference. They talk about what you say, they listen to it, and it affects their decisions. So voting is just the first part. Getting involved in your community is very important, and I want to encourage you to do that. I would like to thank Chad and Empower Poly for putting this on, and I know that we went long. I appreciate you all staying. Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank EcoSlow, the Air Pollution Control District, for helping us host this. Again, we'll just end with that. We'd like to thank you all for coming. Vote next week for climate change solutions, and vote on your way out. Choose your future. Thank you so much.